everyone. Welcome to the Trail Talk High Pointing podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and the high pointer that we're speaking with today is Tiffany Smith from Houston, Texas. Tiffany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So let's start off with a question that I ask everyone. What got you into the outdoors and what got you high pointing?
Oh my goodness. It kind of was actually an ex-boyfriend. I was in a relationship with a guy who lived in the UK. He was from England, and he had wanted to do Ben Nevis, the highest point of Scotland, on one of my trips over. And so that was actually my first high point, was one in the UK. Was Scotland's highest point. And I always reflect and look back on, I literally went up that mountain with a pair of old rain boots and this like I had a raincoat from work because I work operations, and so we're outside, and it was like this very heavy, bright yellow raincoat. When I think of the gear I went up with, I had no idea. I just was like, oh, it's just a hike, be outside. Not really knowing, what I know about the mountains now is that was,
I think a
there could
lot of
be
people have a
dangers
similar
involved, and I
story.
just never had this mentality of it would be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people have been there. We don't talk about it enough, but yeah.
Yeah. So, that was the first one I did. And so we did the high point of Scotland. We did Ben Nevis. That was the very first one I did. And then, we did a few others. I did Mount Viren out in Bulgaria, which is the second highest point there. And then I did Snowdon, which was in Wales. And then we also did Carrauntoohil, which is in Ireland. So most of my beginning hiking was actually over in Europe. And I was traveling over there every 3 months or so to go see him. And it was a Thanksgiving week. It's so hard to fly Thanksgiving week. It's just a busy time to go and everything else. So I decided to stay here in Houston. And I thought, well, let me go see if I can, let me look around the US and see if there's something I could manage. And a friend of mine had said, you should go out to do the high point of Texas. I think you'd enjoy it. And so I looked into it and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So that was the very first US high point I did was my home state of Texas because I had gotten encouraged by a friend who suggested it. So I drove out there. It's about 11. I drove to Carlsbad. It was 11-hour drive. Did it in a day. Woke up early in the morning.
From Houston to Guadalupe Peak, it's 11 hours.
Yeah. Most people don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they know it, but until you start talking numbers and miles and hours, they're like, wait, what?
I know. That's what fascinates me about the Texas high pointers. Because some of them, they'll say, yeah, I live in Texas, but I haven't done the high point yet because I live so far. And there are so many other high points that are closer. And I don't think people realize just how vast Texas is.
Well, I mean, this is about a lot of the high point. I mean, we know just high pointing, there's just a lot of driving involved. Because I mean, you could fly into Midland, Odessa or something like that over there. But for me, it just made, I don't know, I just drove from here. But so I drove the 11 hours by myself, woke up early, went to the trailhead, climbed it by myself. And when I was on my way, I think I was on my way down. There was the lady that was hiking about the same pace that I was or so, and we just started chatting. And she asked me if I was a high pointer. And I said, I don't know what that is, but I'm interested. And so she said, well, it's just a group of people that's trying to get to the highest point of every state. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool. What do I do? How do I join? And she's like, you just go do it. That's okay. She said, there is a Facebook group. So when I get cell phone service, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation through Facebook to add you to the group or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. So, but when I got back to Houston, I had that whole, she sent me the information on the high pointing group, and I, submitted to be a part of it. So then I could start to see what everybody was posting and start to get a sense of what this was. And I'm like, oh, you literally just go out and do it. So
yeah, it's a fun community though, to know that there are so many other people who do it, and there are so many other people who you can use as resources, either through the Facebook group or the High Pointers Club or the magazine that we get quarterly and you can read about other people's stories. It's cool to know that you're not the only one.
Yeah. But I definitely didn't know that it was a thing until like there's groups and lots of people out there doing it until I did my first one. So it was just by chance. I'd really gotten to enjoy the stuff we were doing in Europe. And then I was like, well, I think I could do something by myself. So I did. That was the first one I did was Texas.
So, were you always somebody who liked hiking or being in the outdoors since you were little, or was this something you found in adulthood?
I definitely found it in adulthood. I'm from Minnesota where we have a pretty robust like outdoor life. I mean, I was used to being outside, like, growing up, and I'm Gen X millennial, that whole like mid-range thing where like your parents sent you outside after school, before dinner, all that stuff. And so, I mean, I just spent so much of my childhood outdoors, and we have a lot of like woods and lakes, and we're known for all the lakes and stuff. So I was definitely used to outdoor spaces, but I wasn't raised like camping or hiking or anything like that. I was more, I was like figure skater, hockey player. So I was always athletic and into sports.
Minnesota sports.
Yeah. I was always athletic and into sports, but the whole outdoor thing, I really just found later as an adult. Like it's something I had always kind of wanted to do, but I think
Hmm.
like for me, I was just a little intimidated too. It's one of those things where sometimes you think about doing it by yourself, especially for us as women, where it can have a little bit of intimidation factor, especially because there can be some negative news about, you know, people getting attacked or just whatever. So, it wasn't something like I wanted to do it, but I kind of also was like hoping somebody would come along and be wanting to do it with me, so I wasn't alone. So I kind of got
Hmm.
fortunate in that regard, I guess, with that relationship I was in, because it really was a catalyst for me to be like, oh, okay, I'm okay to do this by myself
Yeah.
too.
So, what are some of the differences that you noticed hiking or high pointing in the UK and in the US? Or what are some of the hiking cultural differences that you noticed?
The only thing when I started, okay, so I started with like the rain boots, like I said. And so he was like, we should probably get you, like, you should probably get an actual pair of like hiking boots and stuff. And I remember I was looking at, like REI or online or wherever I was, and he was taken aback about how expensive it was. And he's like, "What? Actually, why don't you wait until you come here and like we'll go to the one of the stores
Wow.
here." So I got my first pair of hiking boots over in the UK too, and it was like the equivalent more of like 50 US dollars compared to like the
Wow.
hundreds that we sometimes spend here. Yeah.
I know.
But other than that, I feel like I mean, the gear's largely the same. I mean, outdoors is kind of outdoors. The challenge might be
Yeah.
just in like, most of the hiking I did was English speaking areas at the time. Snowden,
Hmm.
Snowden was a little interesting because everything's in Welsh, so there might be some areas where like there could be language barriers or something, but I didn't really notice any big differences. And I'm really grateful I had the experiences over there. The weather's kind
Yeah.
of crap from like I think Ben
Right.
Nevis, you get a view like twice. If you're lucky, you might be the one of the people that gets it like the 2 times a year that it's actually a view up there.
And I've also heard that they don't really have a lot of wildlife there in terms of like predators.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I don't think we never had concerns about crossing anything that was going to attack us. There was no like preparing for bears or worrying about any of that. Yeah, that's fair
Like
too.
hanging food or anything.
Yeah, you're right. Like we never discussed through any of that if there was any concerns that we had or to that
Hmm.
effect.
So you do your first Texas High Point, you get introduced to the Facebook group. Um, what was next, and how did you go about planning? Did you say I'm going to do all 50, or did you just say let's see where this goes?
I did decide, well, I had so again I was still like with that guy and I was like this would be cool. I think I'm going to try to do this, and at the time we were going through the immigration process to like move him over here and stuff, and I thought maybe it was something we could end up kind of doing together. Now we broke up with things it getting somebody to move countries for you. We started to kind of fall apart, and then COVID happened and it just really
Oh,
ended at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
So I've done a lot of them by myself. I did a few before we ended up breaking up, but I'm really fortunate. My mom's retired from Delta Airlines, and so I have flight benefits through Delta. And so for a little
That's
while,
great.
So from here, Delta flies to their hubs. So most of just their main cities, like Salt Lake City, Minneapolis, Detroit, and Atlanta. And so I took a couple of trips out to Atlanta and rented a car and did the high points that were kind of like 5 hours of driving or so from there.
Oh yeah, that's pretty easily accessible
Yeah,
in
because I
terms of
could do it
driving.
kind of in like a 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
Just take a flight out over there, rent a car. And so after I did Texas, that was November 2018. I went back in the summer of 2019 and I did Tennessee and Georgia at that point. And
Hmm.
I'm kind of checking my notes over here because I forget the dates sometimes.
Yeah. Did you go to North Carolina in that trip?
I didn't on that one.
Okay.
In 2019, I did Tennessee and Georgia. And then after that, I didn't do anything until the following summer, and that would have been COVID times. So,
A lot of people started during COVID because it's just you and your car for most people. And, you go through these places that are not very populated, and then you might be the only one on the trail in these smaller ones.
yeah. Well,
And plus, everyone had the time off of work.
yeah, well, I'm fortunate I didn't have any issues. You know, a lot of people lost their jobs, that kind of thing. I'm fortunate I had a job all through
Yeah.
COVID and stuff, and so I was still
Yeah.
working. What I did do during COVID though, I ended up I needed a new car and I bought a new car and because again I'm lucky with the flight benefits and stuff. I really wanted a manual transmission because that's what I was driving. And so they're hard to find now though. And so I opened up my
Are
search
they?
to like the whole country. And so I ended up finding what I was looking for up in Wisconsin. And so my mom and my stepdad they actually went to go look at it for me. And so I bought it. They looked at it. I bought it without ever seeing it. And then they drove it back to their house. Now this was COVID times. It was summertime back when they were doing like 60% capacity on the flights and stuff. So I actually tried
Mm.
standing by for a flight back home like for several days with no luck. I finally did make it out. It was July 4th weekend and I flew up
Hmm.
to Minnesota to pick up my new car. And then I did a road trip and did a whole bunch of high points on my way back to Texas. So,
Oh, wow. That's a
yeah.
lot.
So I went and did Iowa. I did Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana on that trip.
So, what are some of your most memorable high points? We know probably Texas, but what else?
I think Kings Peak in Utah is one of my most memorable, partly because I convinced one of my friends that lives here in Houston to go with me. And we ended up having to go back a second year because we didn't summit the first year. And it's very memorable because first of all, I was there with like one of my best friends. And so of course you just kind of have fun and you laugh and have a good time along the way. We're both like kind of crazy animal people. The sight of like a deer or an elk or something like that would get both of us like kind of overly excited. Or like we'd
Yeah,
see the
I
birds and
think
just be
anyone would.
like, "Oh, the birds are here for us." So
Yeah.
so we had a lot of fun. It's also memorable because the first time we went, the reason why we didn't summit, my friend ended up with really bad altitude sickness, and she was struggling. I thought she was just kind of really like tired. I didn't actually know how bad her altitude sickness was until we were like done with the hike, and she didn't fully tell me. Like I knew that she
Yeah.
was struggling. We got the top of Anderson Pass, and she was also doing and I say all this because she was also doing our navigation. So I mean, I had a map and stuff too, but I just was kind of everything was going fine,
There's
so I was
one
listening to her.
person who's like, yeah, so it's like an unelected person who's just like, you got this. And it's just understood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when we got to the top of the saddle, you can go left or right, and I was like, oh, I think it's over here to the left, and she's like, no, it's over there to the right. And I'm like, but I see people over there, and I'm assuming they're going to Kings Peak. I think it's that way. And then she got mad at me.
Yeah.
She's like, it's right here. Look at this. It's up here. If you look at this. And I was, okay. All right. So she stayed at the top of the saddle and I went by myself. And sure enough, I got to the summit and it wasn't Kings Peak. It was, Henry Forks Peak. So I
Okay.
still made it to a summit. It just wasn't the one,
Yeah, you
obviously,
did.
that I intended. And so I came down and she was sitting there waiting and she's like, "You're going to be so mad at me." I said, I'm not mad, but that was the wrong peak. It's okay. It's fine. So we went back to the tent and again, I was for as big as that mountain is, I'm so much more skilled now than even I was then. Everything we did was safe and stuff, but I even look back now, I can do better planning. I'm better at navigating now and stuff too. We had planned on we brought enough stuff to have like an extra day because we were a little concerned about how much, like, could we make it out in 2 days? We might need that third day. So we were really tired with her altitude sickness. So we came out the next day. But I didn't know how bad her altitude sickness was until we were like, we left. She's like, yeah, I was sort of hallucinating. The clouds were becoming things. What? How
Whoa.
did you not tell me all this? I never should have left you by yourself. So there were some of those conversations that happened afterwards. So we went back the
Yeah.
following year though, because she also was really disappointed for herself. So we're both
Mhm.
like, we both have a fitness background, and she just really felt upset that like her body had kind of failed her kind of thing, and she wasn't able to summit. So she was determined to go.
Yeah, I
So
know. A lot of people feel like that. A lot of like very athletic people who, um, get to altitude and then their body shuts down, thinks like, oh, it's because I didn't train hard enough, or, it's because my fitness is subpar, but it's just so not. And it's the hardest thing to accept, I think.
I think so too. And I probably underestimated some of the altitude stuff in those earlier years of doing some of the high pointing as well.
Yeah, me too.
So I think
Hmm.
there was partly that. So the following year when we went back, we also did much better planning. We stayed in Park City and did some light hiking around just to help get us better acclimatized before we went and did the
That's a good
peak.
idea.
Yeah, and then we
Yeah.
camped up a little bit higher. The only thing about that second year, we got caught, we saw the storm rolling in. We were like, we got to start getting down. So we were getting hailed on our way down. That felt terrible. It felt like cement. It hurts.
Yeah.
But
Now
we
I
got
see why
back to
this is
the tent
terrible.
and it was just downpouring. And originally we were going to pack up and try to hike further out. We were both exhausted. We thought, well, we're at least going to wait out the heavy rain. And we
Yeah.
passed out in the tent, food and everything in the tent. I woke up in the middle of the night and was, uh-oh, like this is not, there's so much about this that isn't really safe. We like totally passed out with the food and everything in our tent because we were only planning on just
Oh,
resting for a couple hours and then we were out. It
yeah.
was the middle of the night. I remember I had to go
Wow.
to the bathroom so bad though. And so I got out of the tent and I went to go outside. I heard hooves somewhere. Something was out walking around, but I never saw anything. Yeah.
You guys got so lucky.
Yeah, we really did. I feel like there's a little bit of luck sometimes to some of these things.
Always. Yeah.
Even with
Yeah.
the greatest of planning, and if you have like, even if you've got really great skills, I mean, you're still dependent on weather and conditions and, wildlife. So it can be a little bit of luck to it too. Kings Peak is,
Of course.
even though we camped higher up, you just, there's a false summit up there. It feels like it just kind of kept going.
Hmm.
So there's always that mental
Hmm.
piece that is exhausting to you too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I kind of experienced something similar to that on Humphreys Peak. And I was having altitude sickness because I didn't eat that morning because my then boyfriend, now husband, and I had this big Mexican dinner the night before. And I woke up, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm still good. I don't need to eat breakfast. So we were coming from Yuma, Arizona, which is the state low point, and we drove the night before to Flagstaff. And then we're on Humphreys Peak, and both of us are in the Army at this time, and people are passing us on the trail. And so we were like, well, I don't like the feeling of people going faster than, like we should be conditioned. So we pushed ourselves a little too hard to get up to the summit, like fast, even though it was a perfect day out. These people who were passing us obviously live in Flagstaff, which is like 7,000 feet elevation. I don't know why we felt this need to, I don't know, pass them. And then there were these fall summits, and I knew at like the first fall summit that I was not okay, and I was thirsty and I was hungry, and but I kept going anyways, and I just wouldn't stop. And then by the time we got back down, my lips were dry, I was foaming at the mouth, and I just vomited everywhere. But I didn't want to say anything because I'm like, we came this far, I don't want to turn around. And also, he was my boyfriend that I didn't want to like, whatever.
Did you feel better after you vomited?
Everything. Oh, totally.
I've had, I
Yeah,
don't
but it
know,
wasn't instant.
I don't know if it's an aging thing, but I've had some recent, the other thing I've been going out to do now that I'm getting so close to the end on the high points is I've been going out to Colorado to do like the 14ers. And I've had the last couple of years, I've had some like instances of altitude sickness, which I didn't have too much at the beginning of this journey. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or something too. I'm not sure, but I've had a few times I've vomited, and it almost instantly makes me feel better though. So I don't try to fight it. I'm like, let's just let it happen, and then I'm good to go.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, I wish I did that earlier as soon as it came out. But like that and some Pedialyte and rest, obviously cures it. But I think like going fast when you start out is not something that I take seriously enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, there's
It's like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no substitute for like just taking it slow and just letting your body, I mean, just sleeping at different altitudes, walking slow. Because I did that, I went to do Rainier last summer. And so I went out to Colorado the weekend before, and I kept telling myself, because I kept telling myself the whole time, I was like, I'm not even sure I'm going to make it to the summit. I got in super late. I didn't even get to the trailhead till like 2 in the morning, and I was trying to leave at like 7. I was pretty underslept, really tired, and I just kept having to remind myself. So the whole reason why you're here is just get some altitude, take it slow. We don't have to make it. But I'm also a really like mentally strong person where I just also, you're gonna make it. We'll be fine. So I did make it to the summit, but I vomited at the summit for that one. But the whole purpose was just, I just kept telling myself, I'm here to sleep at altitude, take it slow, trying to get ready for the big one for me was Rainier the following weekend. Yeah, there's no substitute for it.
Yeah, when I was on Rainier, I kind of had a headache going up, and I was coming from North Carolina, where I am right now. I didn't say anything to the guide because I knew that if I said, well, I kind of have a headache, I'm not feeling well, the first thing they do is turn you around. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. If it were worse, I obviously would have said something, but I'm like, it's going to suck, but I can make it up. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm glad I did. But I think that knowing those limits comes with experience.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if you've gone and done a bunch, you probably know what's a little bit of a pressure headache that you can manage and tolerate and still be okay, and like what's not okay for you.
Yeah.
So,
and then when we got to the summit, we're all like sitting around in a circle, and there was this girl in there who's a PA, and she brought some like medicine up there. And I just, without thinking, like, hey, can I have some? And she goes, yeah, sure. And the guide was like, how long have you been feeling that? How long have you had a headache? And I'm like, it doesn't matter now because we're going down. The only way we can go is down. Why do you care? Not, I mean, she was great. We're all exhausted, feelings come out. But in my head, I'm thinking like, does it matter how long at this point? I don't think it does.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I didn't mention either, what I did for Kings Peak both years too, is I fasted. I had this thing in my head. Wow. I had heard this podcast with this guy who had fasted before going to the mountains because it was a bit of like kind of a spiritual thing. And so I felt like this is what I was going to also sort of do for myself. And so for some of the high points, I mean, the lower ones, it's not that serious. It's a few hours. But for Kings Peak, for the 3 days I was in the doing Kings Peak, I didn't eat. I only drank tea or water or coffee.
Okay.
So I fasted when I did those. And I essentially tried to do the same thing for Boundary. And Boundary was one that I started to feel some altitude. pressure in my head,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And but I was determined, like, still not to eat or anything, but I was struggling a little bit. That was the one, before we started recording, we were talking about Mihai. That was the one I'd done with Mihai. Mihai always carries gummy bears with him. And he was pushing these gummy bears on me, and I was like, I don't want your gummy bear. So finally, we were on the way down, and I finally took one, and all I
Hmm.
did was just like, I just sucked on it, and that little bit of sugar actually did make a difference. I started feeling better. And so
Yeah.
I realized my blood sugar was probably just too low. So some of the nutrition and stuff along the way is something we all just try to figure out what works for us. I feel like food is a struggle for me in on the peaks in the
Hmm.
mountains. I don't always enjoy eating when I'm doing, yeah, but I also
Yeah,
recognize
same.
that
And
I had that
I
one
have to like
moment where
set
the
it.
blood sugar was too low, and so I know I need to do something. Some of
Um,
the bigger peaks too, I know that because I've gone guided on some big peaks in Europe. Well, not in Europe, in South America. We did. So they plan the breaks and stuff. I'm more of a person. I feel I identify with a tortoise. I want to take
mhm.
like slow steps. I don't move very quickly. I always joke that I was built for strength, not for speed. I'm not very fast in the mountains, but I can go for a long time. And so I feel like
Mhm.
I just want to take slow, consistent steps all the way up. And I actually don't really want to stop. Like, I don't like the break sometimes because I also have moments where I feel like it's going to impact my ability to want to even keep going. So mentally for me, if
Yeah.
I just take one step at a time, keep going for hours and hours and hours, it's better for me. Or if I do stop, it's just to take a few extra breaths or something, give myself just a moment of recovery, but I'm not sitting down, pulling food out, all that stuff.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I now that I think about it, on Whitney, every time that I stopped, it was because I was probably going too fast or I was like too tired. And yeah, maybe things would have been a little different on every peak if I had just slowed it down a little bit, you know. I'm gonna have to edit this out because the phrase is escaping me, but it's like there was something we would say in the army to imply that fast is not always the best. It's like fast is slow and slow is faster. I don't know. But the point is, like, when let's say you're jumping out of a plane and you have to tie up your parachute, people will get frantic. And then any mistake that you make could be your last mistake. So it's always better to be slow and efficient rather than the first one there or something like that. They had a really catchy phrase. You mentioned that you go to Colorado and you're doing the 14ers. Is that like a road trip that you do out there, or do you fly out there frequently for that?
I'll fly out to Denver generally.
Mhm.
And again, this is kind of just working through if it's a holiday weekend or something like that. That's what I like
Are you trying
lists.
to complete the 14ers?
I think so. I like lists. So I've got 47 of the state high points. I'm close to having that done. So I thought, well, what else should I be working on too? So I thought the 58 14ers in Colorado seemed like a good option. So I've got 10 or 11 of them now. I know some people are super into this stuff where they want the certain prominence list or they want the county high points. I mean, there's a lot of people, or the things that they're out doing. I sometimes just feel what what peaks can I go climb? Which I don't. I just was looking for something that gave me some sort of structure. If there's a list, it's kind of helpful to have
Hmm.
structure like that. Again, it's partly
Yeah,
just because of where I live. Like, I just don't have access to the mountains to be, you know, getting enthralled and people get really into it because they can go out on the weekends and decide which ones they want to do
yeah.
and the routes they want to take and everything else. But I have to plan it every
Well,
time I'm
plus
going to do
also
it.
like Texas is so vast. Even if you were to do that county high points, the planning would be probably similar to the 50 state high points.
I
Like,
think I'm understanding. I don't think anyone's finished Texas. I think some of them are on military bases and some are on private property. And of course, Texans have guns, so we don't. I think I've heard no one's finished Texas County High Points. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that's what I've heard. because of the
That's
location.
why I don't want to do North Carolina high points because I'm like, I don't want to step on the wrong guy's property.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I don't know. I've done a few county high points just because I met up with Mihai, who've had on the podcast a few times. I've met up with him and
Hmm.
he was doing some county high points around New York. So, sure, why not? So I've done a few
Yeah,
county
yeah.
high points here and there just because I was tagging along with other people. But for me, I don't
Hmm.
really have an interest in that. I like big peaks. The 14ers is interesting to me. A 13ers would be fun too. So,
Yeah. I always talk about how high pointers like two things, maps and lists. And you bring up a really good point about how the list provides structure because it's always like what's next, you can look what you've completed. And that is something about us. We do like that. And one of the lists that I'm taking on right now vicariously through my daughter are these junior ranger badges. And I'm working on this little project right now where I'm going to do a podcast and an article in the magazine about high points that offer kids these junior ranger badges. And like North Carolina state parks, we have all of them. They give out little badges. So I never did that when I was a kid, but she's 2. She has no idea what these are. But I am like the stage mom junior ranger edition where I'm like, you're doing this. I'm filling out all these workbooks for you. And then you go hand it to the junior ranger. Okay. And like, I'm there, backstage, just like this.
that's so fun.
I tell myself one day she'll appreciate it. Who knows?
I hope she
But,
does. It's really cool that you're raising her to be outdoors and stuff. Because I wish most of the things that I do in life now, I wish I had started so much sooner. When I
but
was younger.
I've thought about that too, but I also think that it's cool when you discover it on your own and it wasn't just like a way of life for you. There's like a sense of like autonomy that you can take over it. Like, this is my thing. I discovered it and I developed my own interest in it. Nobody pushed me into it. Nobody handed it to me. I think there's a sense of pride in that too. And I think I think it's always easy to think that the grass would be greener had I been exposed to this earlier, but you have way more resources when you discover these things as an adult.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. I agree. I appreciate all that you said to look at it that way. I think I just struggle sometimes I feel like I'm up against my age to like
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like the fitness
Yeah.
is there and the things I can, get done and accomplish before maybe things start.
Hmm.
Speaking of memorable high points, the last few that I did, Granite and Gannett, I was on a team with women in their 60s and they're
Wow.
out there. I was so inspired. Speaking of speed, like they're moving so much quicker than I am. They're so strong. And so it was very good
Hmm.
inspiration. Just always, as long as I keep myself in good physical shape, keep going out as often as I can. I hopefully will be doing this. One of them was 67. So hopefully I'm pushing 70 or later, still
It
doing.
is inspiring.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're not talking easy high points. Gannett, we were out there 5 days, So yeah, it was really inspiring.
Yeah,
Made
it
me feel a
is.
little bad about myself. It's like I'm quite a bit younger. I shouldn't be struggling like I am.
There's always a handful of the 60 somethings in every half marathon, every, local half marathon or marathon where they pass you and you're like, what am I doing?
Exactly.
Like, what's happening in my life? I did a women's climb on Rainier and it was the same thing.
Okay. So you know what
The
I'm
older
saying.
ones were, yeah, yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of inspiring women out there that
Hmm.
are older like that where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be all right. Again, I just panic a little bit in my own head where you live in Houston, you don't live in the mountains because they at least live in places where they have good outdoor space. One of them lives in Colorado, so to be out in the mountains training for these things. I just feel like if you can be out hiking every weekend, certainly your cardio is going to do a lot better for these types of, endeavors. So I just
Yeah.
sometimes because mentally it's this why you live at sea level and there's no mountains here and doing the best I can to stay fit and I'm up against the aging process. So
No, I faced the same things. I took a trip out to Southern California 2 years ago to climb the Three Saints. It was San Antonio, San Gorgonio, and San Jacinto. And San Antonio is more commonly known as Mount Baldy, just outside of Los Angeles. And I started with that one. And as I was going up, there were these older people coming down, and everyone was so friendly on that trail in California. Hi, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, this is great, But I was taken by surprise. But these older people were like, are you going all the way to the top? I said, yeah, that's the goal. They're like, wow, great, good for you. Where are you coming from? They wanted to start this whole conversation. And I was all about it. And I started talking to them. And then once, I had moved on, I thought, wow, they are so happy. And then I thought about it and I'm like, well, of course they are. It's a Tuesday. It's 10 a.m. and they're hiking on this beautiful mountain. And maybe when they get down, they'll go surfing. And the weather is always 70 degrees and it's absolutely beautiful here. Of course they're happy. But that's just reality. And then, I come back to North Carolina, it's what it is. It's always different every day. There's where I am, where mostly it's sea level. The mountains are like a 4-hour drive away, but it's like, you just gotta, I think I don't see it as a choice. Like you have to, I tell myself, I have to find the natural, beautiful places here. Like there's no way that they don't exist. They're somewhere and I have to find it and I have to just extract everything out of it that I can recreationally because otherwise
North Carolina, are you in?
I'm near Fayetteville.
Okay, that's
near Fort Bragg. So I'm actually in this town called Sanford. It's between Fayetteville and Raleigh, basically a suburb of Raleigh.
Okay, so more on the east side.
Yeah. Yeah, like central east. But we're here because of my husband's job. He's active duty, so we're moving to Arizona in 2 months.
Oh wow, then
who knows where after that.
You'll have I went to Arizona for Christmas this year just to go do some hiking. So you'll have access to at least some peaks and stuff around there.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And who knows where after that, might end up in Texas. So
yeah. What part of Arizona are you going to go to?
Yuma. So stay low point again.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
Well, we found some good peaks out there.
Yeah,
but the difference
I guess I shouldn't say. After I graduated college, I lived in Phoenix for only about 6 months. I did an internship at the Sky Harbor Airport, so I drove around Arizona for a little while. That's why kind of where I had driven over to California to visit. My half sister was heading out there, so we hung out. I just remember going through Yuma. That's why I said that. But this was a long time ago. Things might be different.
Yeah, people just know Yuma from passing through it on their way, like on I-8 to California. And yeah, people from Phoenix have they call it Satan's butthole and stuff. And there's a reason because it's like always 10 degrees hotter. But it's one of those things that I told myself, you have to just find stuff to do out here. And we did. There is the Gila mountain range right behind our house in the foothills. And we found some trails. Nobody's out there. So you have these trails mostly to yourself. The Kofa National Wildlife Refuge is about 40 minutes away, and there's some beautiful hiking there. And then, of course, like Palm Springs and the San Gabriel Mountains in California are not that far away. So there's something there. But again, it's like I guess you do have a choice. You could say, this sucks and I'm just going to go to Planet Fitness and hope I stay in shape. Or you can say, I'm determined to find something out here. And that is actually what has gotten me into like local conservation, because I will I'll visit all the state parks and I will volunteer there and realize like there's so much going on here within these little ecosystems. Like we want to save this fish or this little bird, or there's these efforts to bring back this population or repopulate this plant in this area. And there's so many like little projects to get involved in that are not, you wouldn't know it unless you looked for it. So that's been like a fun little side quest. I guess that doesn't have much to do with high points, but I think that has developed out of, like living in these places that I guess climbers wouldn't normally gravitate to. So what was your most memorable high point east of the Mississippi?
Um, well, I guess just because we were saying, I mean, Mount Rogers is just, I mean, there's ponies, and I told you how I feel about animals, so I like was
Yeah.
losing my mind. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me with these wild ponies. I
Hmm.
remember when they like I first came around a corner and there was like a pony butt in front of me. No, and then it started walking away. I was like, no, no, I'm your friend. Come back. Just,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
was so exciting. And I had run into
What time of
people.
year were you there?
It's a good question. It was summer. It was let's see. I did that one July 4th weekend 2021.
Okay.
It was summertime.
Okay.
My
Yeah.
sister, that was a fun trip though too, because so my half sister lives in Fort Mill, which is like 30 minutes south of Charlotte. And so that trip
Hmm.
I did a few of the high points, but then I also got to spend time with my family because I think I flew in and out of Charlotte because I was hanging out with them too. And that one, yeah, what did I do that whole trip? That was yeah, July 1st I did South Carolina, the 2nd I did North Carolina, and I did Kentucky, and then July 4th I did Virginia. Yeah, it was fun. Because they had a friend who had a cabin that was sort of along my driving route, and so I even found a place to stay to have a shower. That's the other thing about a lot of this high pointing. I'll just sleep in the rental car. I don't get a lot of hotels along the way. I'll just sleep in the rental car and anyway, so it was nice. I had this like cool cabin in the woods and that was a really fun trip. Yeah, Mount Rogers. I've been trying to get my friends because I did it as a I did end up camping for that one because I had kind of read and thought it was cool. My campsite was too far away from the ponies, so I kind of have a strategy if I ever go back where to set up camp so that because there were some people that said the ponies will come and like kind of play with your tent a little bit. I didn't have that experience,
Oh my
so I'm very
gosh.
sad. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, at least I there was at one of the shelters. I was just kind of sitting there talking to somebody. They said that their camp was set up and the ponies were like, like putting their noses up against the tents and stuff. I thought, well, I
That's
got to have
cute.
this happen in my life for sure. There's like no greater
Yeah.
excitement for me. So I've been trying to convince my friends to go back. I'm the type of person that my friends here in Houston, they'll do the outdoor stuff. It's just harder for people to get like the time off of work, kind of things we were talking about,
It
and
is.
then
Yeah.
they've got families around and try to, manage all of the things. I'm trying
Hmm.
I'm like, we really do need to do Mount Rogers because we're crazy animal people. So we have to do Mount Rogers.
Yeah.
We got to camp. I know where we can set up camp in that area where they said that the ponies would play with their tent. It'd be the greatest thing. But yeah, either that was a really nice, and actually, I don't know if people talk enough about how beautiful that area is. It was so
It
stunning.
is. Yeah.
The whole
Yeah. The
Grayson
Highlands.
Highlands area. I don't know. Maybe it's because it depends on where you live or where you come from. I just was, wouldn't have known. That's been one of my favorite parts
Hmm.
about high pointing in general, though, is we just see parts of the country that a lot of people never see because they don't take those big drives out and that kind of thing. I just have been so fascinated with, I mean, our country is just so stunning. We are so blessed. And, I mentioned the whole kind of spiritual thing for me. Some of this stuff does, like, I just don't see how you can be out and see how great just it's so stunning and so beautiful without having some sort of spiritual sort of connection to the earth. I know that's one of the reasons why I actually really love high pointing too. It's been a fantastic way to
Hmm.
see our country
Yeah.
and
I agree.
all it has to offer.
Yeah. I think a lot of people focus on the national parks, and of course, high pointing will take you to those too. But I think that it gives you a more unique experience. And I was talking about this on another episode where it really allows you to witness the unique character of every state. Because Illinois, for example, having grown up there, it's not just Chicago. It's not just Springfield. Like when you sit at that bench on Charles Mound and you look at the hills in Northwest Illinois, like that that is a unique characteristic of Illinois that I don't think you would experience if you go to like Millennial Park in Chicago, or you find a spot on a beach on Lake Michigan and the Gold Coast. That's a fun experience, but it's not necessarily Illinois. And I think that you can have that experience at a lot of different state high points, like Florida. Florida is not just Miami and Key West. It is flat, and there's a lot of farms, there's a lot of lakes and forest, and it's wild. And not that Lakewood Park is necessarily wild, but it is Florida. So I think Arizona is another one that I was thinking about the other day. It's not just saguaro cacti in the Sonoran Desert. The San Francisco peaks are stunning and a unique feature of the state. So it not only takes you to places you haven't been, but it allows you to witness and be a part of these great parts of each state.
Yeah,
One of my favorite
even the
parts.
road trip piece of it. I mean, it always depends on like the routes that you're taking, but I just feel like I've even road tripped through parts of the country that if it weren't for high pointing, I would never know existed. I remember being in
No.
like southern Alabama and there were these massive mansions. I swear to God, they had their own, like each one had its own private lake or something. And I was so confused. I was like, what are these? I'm like, we're not near anything. What do these people do? I just,
I know.
there's just been times where there's parts, I honestly, I just end up just, I don't even know what the right words are. There's just so much amazingness about our country, whether it's the small towns you drive through or the countryside. And some of it you just end up curious about because you're thinking, how do these people live out here this way? Where are they getting their food from? Where are all these big mansions coming from that are not near any sort of city that you can tell? I just have seen so many things that it's just, I feel like I've used the word "so" a lot to really like expound on.
Well, that's common. I mean, when I do these things now with my daughter, I envision myself as a mom wanting to travel abroad with my daughter and like go down all these adventures. And I still want to, of course, but it's kind of almost difficult to think about that when you think about what there is to do in our country, and just to know that maybe you'll get it done in a lifetime, maybe. But I can see me like not completing all my lists before my time's up because there's so much to do here and there's so much to see.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone, well, I mean, I'm an outdoor person and I'm an adventurous person. I just don't know how anyone can be bored in life. I just posted a couple weeks ago. I just feel like sometimes I wish I could have more than one life. There's just so many hobbies and so many skills, and there's just so much I would like to be able to do. And there's just, I know time is finite and it's limited to be able to do it all. I mean, even outside of like the outdoor stuff and outside of the hiking, there's just a lot of different hobbies and stuff I'd like to take up. Because I even have friends that are like, we should go play pickleball. And I even have to say, that'd be great. I don't have room in my life for another hobby because I'm sure I'll love it. Anything that's sort of active and fun and social.
Yeah.
It's just, I am already
Yeah,
like
that's
leaving my
true.
house at 7, getting home at 9 or 10 at night because I just, after work, so I don't know where I'd fit another hobby in.
I know. But that's the great thing about high points is like you can bring friends along and maybe they don't have to convert to high pointism, but they could just accompany you on a hike, and you kind of, even if it's just like once a year where you do that with other people.
Yeah.
It's
I've been
fun.
so fortunate. I've been able to talk some people into doing some of these high points with me who otherwise, I mean, I've even had some of them just say, I don't think I could even do that. I've probably brought a couple of people on some hikes where in hindsight, I say in my mind, we'll go slow. We can take a lot of rest breaks, start early. And then I see them struggling a little bit. And I thought, oh, maybe I did
Yeah.
underestimate that kind of thing. And we were talking kind of right before we started. I sometimes feel like I have imposter syndrome. I'm really humble about this whole journey. I kind of underestimate my own skills. And it's also because I've been very fortunate to end up on some big peaks and doing some pretty amazing things with people who've been doing it for a very long time and are very skilled. Or like I said, they live in, on, or around the mountains. So they're out there very frequently to be able to honing in on their skills and have the good physical fitness. So I'm kind of humble about the whole thing too. And that means I always kind of feel like I'm going to be like the least fit, least experienced, least everything when I'm out there. And I've been in a couple of situations where I at least kind of came to find out, like, no, actually, you're doing pretty good. Mentally for myself, oh, I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
doing pretty good. So,
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hard to find supportive groups in outdoor endeavors, which is why I stay away from the internet and social media when it comes to these things. Because I used to, on Instagram, look at different hiking pages and hiking accounts, I guess. And if somebody was doing something different than another person would have done, the comments are brutal.
yeah.
I'm like, you guys, what are we doing here? Like, yeah, some people maybe overestimate their skills. They need to be rescued. All right, whatever. We can talk about that. But if somebody is just wearing a piece of gear that maybe you wouldn't have worn, like, can we all chill?
Yeah, I've seen comments like that too. It's really,
Bad.
yeah.
Because it
Everyone's
implies it.
opinionated out there.
Yeah, yeah. And it makes you think that there are people who think that they own the outdoor space and they get to determine who wears what piece of equipment on what hike and who is qualified to hike it and things like that. But there is a fine line between that and being safe. But the internet's a crazy place. Try to stay away from it.
Yeah, it is hard. I actually for Lent, I took Facebook off I couldn't fully get rid of social media because I have this side gig as a fitness instructor, and some of my students
Okay.
will message me through Instagram. But I took Facebook off my phone, and then I told myself I wasn't going to post anything for Lent. So it largely,
That's a good
I
one.
think I had gone probably at least several days in a row without even opening up Instagram. I've just tried to sort of give up social media as best I could for Lent.
Did you notice a difference? Or
Yeah,
have you
I feel
noticed?
lighter. It's interesting because for me, most of my feed is actually positive.
It's good.
It's
Yeah.
like my algorithm is kind of like funny animal videos, a little bit of like sarcasm, humor. It's a lot of funny stuff. So I don't actually
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of negative things that are happening on my social media. So I even half wonder, you look at some of the science of it, and every time the reason why you even keep scrolling is because you're looking for like that dopamine hit of the next thing that's gonna, whatever, make you laugh or whatever. So I've even had this thought in my head where maybe my dopamine is just kind of resetting. Because again, like,
Yeah.
even if I'm not caught up in some sort of negativity, because my feed's largely positive, there's educational things and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of thing. I feel like even just being off, I've been just reading some more books and that kind of thing, kind of physically to because we just even have these habits of just reaching for our phones, having our phones in our hands. So I've been reading
Mm-hmm.
more. So like it's almost that whole, you hear like smokers, it's like that hand to mouth. I feel like for us, it's like the hand thing with the phone too. So even just having a
Mm-hmm.
physical book in my hand to just my phone is then away from me because something else is there. So that's what I've
That's
been
a good
doing kind of
point.
through this the whole March period. And I don't know, like I feel lighter or freer or something like that. Even though there was nothing
Yeah.
negative that I wasn't caught up in, I've never really felt like anxiety or stress or depression
Right.
over some of it. So I'm guessing there's some sort of dopamine reset or something maybe happening. I'm not even sure,
But
but highly recommend it
that's
for
really
anyone.
good. My algorithm is a lot of outdoor stuff. My favorite are the skiers. Nobody has a better time making fun of themselves than skiers and snowboarders, and I love it. It's
Yeah,
very refreshing.
I've had a lot of skier stuff coming up too, because I went skiing last year for the first time in a lot of years. And so I had so much fun. So I went again this year. And so some of the skiing stuff was coming up. But also my friend, she lives here in Houston, but she also is from Minnesota. And they were home over like the Christmas time. And she took her husband skiing for the very first time. And he's from Houston. So there's been a lot of funny videos that we've sent where she's like, "This is what he looked like," just all in good fun. Because even she said because they paid for a lesson and he made it about halfway through and he said, I think I've had enough if you still want me to enjoy this at some point, like without hating it, kind of thing. So he kind of knew his limit where he thought, this is, what are we doing here?
That's good. That's wise.
Like in your 40s trying to learn to ski for the first time when you're from a state that doesn't
Yeah.
get snow. So, but yeah.
Well, that leads to a good transition, I guess, to my next question, which is if you have a book, podcast, or documentary that is outdoor related recommendation for listeners.
Okay, so I think probably most people would be familiar with Freedom of the Hills. I did read it cover to cover. That one, it's really informational I mean, it's probably more ideal if you're getting ready for a peak and you're trying to look for ideas and skills or thoughts on something that maybe you haven't or you're newer to. Reading the whole section on like avalanches and all the different avalanche stuff. Because when I did Mount Hood by myself, there was some avalanche risk, and so just like kind of working through some of the sections. So it's really good informational one. I don't know if it's totally an outdoor book, but for me, a lot of this is it's the mental piece, especially for the big peaks. And then, of course, we were just talking about like the social media thing. My whole life is I'm very focused on like health and wellness, mental health, physical health. I'm one of these, I eat organic food, have my reverse osmosis water system to make sure my water is like healthy as possible. I'm really into that. But also, when we're talking about social media and stuff, there's a really good book by Michael Easter called The Comfort Crisis. Again, I think that this is one of the reasons why I love high pointing so much, or the hiking or the mountains, is because it's a struggle. And I think there's something to be said for creating some adversity and struggle in your life that really helps to keep things like, depression, anxiety, and those kind of things that can come into our everyday lives because of some of the comforts that exist. It's nice. I mean, I wouldn't give up having a roof over my head or the electronic devices and stuff, but kind of figuring out how they sort of play into your life a bit. And in that book, he talks about, I think he was in like the Antarctic. He was in a very, very cold place, like moose hunting. And they were just suffering out in cold and snow and carrying tons of gear. And so it's relatable in that aspect. I mean, his whole story about getting out of like the comforts was largely about outdoors. And, in that case, it was a hunting thing, but it's very similar to a lot of the camping and stuff that we do as high pointers. So I don't know. I think that's a book. It's just such a mental game for a lot of the, some of them, Mount Sunflower is not going to give you a lot of mental turmoil. So, some of them are drive ups and stuff. But if you really are looking to do some of the hardest and highest ones on the list in our country, then it's a mental game. It's very much a mental game. And so I
I
guess I
agree. Yeah.
appreciate some of that in terms of, in your everyday life, make yourself a little uncomfortable. I even, when I go home to Minnesota in the winter, I cold plunge. I feel like mentally
Wow.
in my head, I live in a hot place, so I've got to make myself like cold resistant a bit. So
Yeah.
I'll go in like the frozen lake for 3 minutes and learn how to like suffer and breathe through it. And I don't know. So I feel like if you could put yourself in these uncomfortable situations and you're doing it intentionally, then some other things in life might not be so challenging.
That's right. And that is a great book. I did I listened to it on audiobook, but it was amazing.
Yeah. And I've seen some
And
interviews with him too. So
yeah, he's a really interesting guy, very smart. It was interesting when I was reading that book. I'm just going to say reading just for the sake of it. I obviously listened to it, but when I was reading it, I thought like, oh, I know how to struggle. I'm just going to read this because why not? And as I was getting through the book, I'm like, maybe I don't, because like anyone can do a hard workout under the perfect conditions, but can you do it when you're tired? Can you do it on a full stomach? Can you do it in really bad weather? Can you do it at this time of the day or night? Can you do it after this, life event or something like that. And no matter how like mentally resilient you think you are, I think there's a lot that you can get out of that book. And thank you for bringing that up, because I haven't thought about that book in a while, but it's really great.
Yeah, I really like some of the mentally, I mean, even like a David Goggins of the world. I've been on hikes where I've literally had David Goggins in my head. And I know he's probably listened to by more of your like male listeners or more men. But I
Mm-hmm.
had listened to his book and I've seen some of his interviews. He's popped into my head where I've been like tired, because
Yeah.
every one of us on these big hikes be like, what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? Wait, like I could
Yeah.
be in a hot tub, like I could be sitting on my couch.
I know. I know.
You're fighting everything that just wants you to stop. And that's for me why some of the books on the mental part of it are really useful.
Yeah. Goggins has a really interesting story, especially knowing that he was once a fat kid.
Yeah.
Like that's how he started out. And
I
now
think I
he's just
legit
like
have been in
this.
my head like, what would Goggins do? He wouldn't quit. You got to keep going. He had that phrase like,
Yeah.
who's going to carry the boat? Like these things would go
Yeah.
through my head where I'm like, I don't know. I also just, for me, it's a lot of the mental stuff. But again, I feel like I'm kind of the slowest one out there. So for me, it's like this slow tortoise game where it's one foot in front of the other. Try to find your rhythm. If I can find a good rhythm of this, the cadence up,
Mm-hmm.
and then get into some sort of good mental space about it. I kind of just have three
Yeah.
rules in the mountains. Number one is don't die. So whatever, like that's
Mm-hmm.
where I'm at least like, or just as long as we don't want to die. And then the second one is try not to get rescued. Be self-sufficient enough not to
Because
get
it's
rescued.
expensive.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
too. I actually didn't. Somebody told me I should add that to my list, for me, like almost anything physical I do, it's really two things: don't die and just try to finish. Like I'm never up against a race. I'm never, and sometimes don't die means you're gonna have to turn around on a mountain. Finishing just means like getting out alive and stuff too. So, but then someone
Yeah,
said,
and it's good for a lot of listeners to remember, nobody here is sponsored. Nobody has an obligation to like do. It's like it's not in any contract that you have. You are not contractually obligated to summit any peak unless you have a sponsor, and I don't think any of my listeners do. So like it's always good to remember that. Like this isn't my job. This is my hobby, and I can always come back if it doesn't work out this time.
yeah. I think though, any of us that are doing it, there's a little bit, I don't know if crazy is the right word, but there's a reason why you've chosen to do this too for most people that are
Oh
doing
yeah.
it. And that you're
Yeah.
definitely a determined type of person.
Yeah, and that's a lot easier to say than to do, because I'm like, hey, my life doesn't depend on this. I can always come back. But then I've been in those moments where I want to like get off a mountain and I'm like, hold on. I had to take all this time off of work to
Hmm.
be here. I had to do all these logistics to be here. I don't know when I can come back, and I'm getting to the top no matter what it takes. I I talk a lot for someone who actually doesn't take my advice.
Well, I'm sure there's a little bit of that in all of us. Although I think I follow most of my advice. I don't know.
So my last question, one of my favorites, is how has high pointing in the outdoors enriched your life?
Oh my goodness. I think I covered some of it through the podcast. I mean,
Yeah. Mhm.
I, I'm, I love our country. It's such a stunning place. And there's a bit of a spiritual piece for me having, even when I've done quite a few of these by myself, and even on the road trips in the car by myself, there's a peace to it for me. I just feel at peace. I feel like kind of just being outside. I just feel in touch with the earth, and it's a bit of a spiritual thing. The other thing, which we didn't kind of get into too much, I've met some really nice and cool people along the way.
Mhm.
There are plenty of the bigger high points I have done with people, and just kind of met them either through the high pointing group online, or in some cases it was people I just met on the trail, and we just kind of started chatting, exchange information, and then we just did a few other high points together. So the community is pretty awesome. I sometimes wish
Mhm.
that more people, like I'm a little slightly introverted ish until like somebody else kind of gets conversations going. I wish there was a little more talking at time. I just would like to make more and more people to do the stuff with. That's kind of how I
Mm-hmm.
feel. I'm happy to do a lot of stuff by myself, but there are things, it's just safer to have another person there too. If you start talking the big peaks and that kind of thing. That's how I view it based on my own skills. There's plenty of people who'd be fine on their own, but um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've met some really, really great people. Some of it through the Facebook group, and then some of it on the trails. So that part's been fun. Just some relationships. I've seen people even just post that they were going to be at a certain area, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing out there? And just see if I could tag
Right.
along or that kind of thing too. So,
Yeah, it's a great community. And you're right. Beautiful place to explore. And thank you for sharing your story with us. Super
well,
interesting.
thanks for having
And
me. I honestly was a little nervous. Again, I'm pretty humble about this whole thing, and I kind of feel I said, I'd be like, I know I'm good at talking. I can probably talk for an hour or so, but I also thought, well, I don't, is my story really any more spectacular, different than anyone else's? I don't know. I don't know who would want to hear it, who's going to listen.
it's not about spectacle. It's about your unique story. And I enjoyed it. And I want to wish you luck on the 3 remaining high points you have
Thanks.
and
Thank you.
all of your lists. And please keep us updated on your progress. Super
I
interesting.
will. The three I have left are Alaska, New Hampshire, and Vermont. I really
Mhm.
feel like logistically, Alaska is the one I have to try to focus on. So if
Mhm.
anyone's listening, because I feel like that is one of them where I'm gonna have to go guided, but even getting myself to get the momentum going to make it happen, I feel like it'd be helpful if there was someone else as like a catalyst and we were sort of planning it together. So if there's anyone
Well,
listening that's like in the
yeah, if
same
anyone's
boat where they're
listening,
like, I want to get Alaska done, but I need some people that really start thinking logistics and planning through. I'm happy to,
yeah,
to have those conversations.
we'll put your email in the show notes and they can reach out
It sounds good.
and you guys can go from there. Bonus if you live in Houston.
Yeah, that'd be yeah. A couple of Houston people going up to do Denali or McKinley, whatever we call it
Yeah.
now. Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be at least it'd be. I could come back on this podcast. I'm sure there'd be stories at that point too.
Thanks again for doing this podcast. I had a lot of fun and good luck on the rest of your journey.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I had a great time.